Welcome back to another episode of the RAG podcast with me, Sean Anderson, the CEO and founder of Hoxo Media. Delighted to be coming every Thursday live on LinkedIn at 8 a.m. UK time, 7 p.m. Australian Eastern time with my partner in crime, my co-host, Pete Watson. Pete, you swapped the specs this week. You managed to get them in.
Well, yeah, I mean, I watched the other one back last week, and these make me look far more intelligent. So it's the only option, really, isn't it?
And a lot younger, Pete.
And actually, younger. In that case, they'll be on every week.
Right. Well, I was going to say tag team. I've got to wear mine next week, so you got away with it. You got away with it, and I think we're both very excited today. We're really excited to be joined by Paul Hallam, who's the executive director and founder of 6 Degrees Executive. I'll let Paul tell us a bit more, but a very well-known organisation, headquartered in Victoria, Australia, and someone who I've worked with closely, and I know Pete has for a very long time. So feeling very privileged. Paul, welcome on the show.
Thanks, Sean. Thanks, Pete. Good to be here, and good to be here out of isolation and lockdown. Which is what are we 2 or 3 weeks into it, and the sun is shining in Victoria, and things are starting to turn around. So it's really good.
Absolutely.
You say that as I'm looking out the window. I mean, it's absolutely horrendous rain. It's cold. My dog's looking out the window right now, thinking I'm not going out. He took one look this morning. Was like, nah. So we'll get into your weather, but I'm a little bit jealous. Paul, for those that don't know you, can you just do us a favor and give us a little overview of who you are and a little bit about your business as well?
Absolutely. So I've been in the recruitment industry for about 22, 23 years. I had 8 years at Michael Page before I took the dive and set up on my own with 2 business partners that fast forward 17 years are still my business partners,
wow.
Which is an accomplishment and achievement in itself.
It is.
But we have created 6 Degrees, which is one of the leading executive recruitment businesses here in Australia. We have offices in Melbourne, Sydney and Brisbane, recruiting across all major executive disciplines, bar HR, interestingly. And we are very focused on the FMCG, consumer goods, retail and B2B sectors.
Right.
We've got about, we were 90 people. We're down to about 80, which we'll talk about a little later. Business for us is going okay. There aren't many businesses in the recruitment industry right now that can say they're hitting the lights out, but business is going really well. We're okay.
Yeah. Well, I think
Paul, can I just say it's nice to hear you say the business is going okay, and to use that word to describe it, because there are still so many business owners who are claiming things are going amazingly well, and and you hear it and you take it with a pinch of salt and then you move on. So it's nice to hear that you're using the correct descriptive for what is actually happening behind those 4 walls.
I think it depends on the lens.
Interestingly, Peter, I got pulled up by one of our people in Sydney when I was, saying things about how business was, and she pulled me up and she said, and she came from another recruiter and joined during COVID and was surprised to find that she still had a job during COVID, and she pulled me up, and rightly so, where I was having a sort of bitch and moan about how things were in comparison to last year. And in comparison to last year, we were considerably down, but she made me realise that we are in pretty unique times, the most unique times I've seen in the recruitment industry in my 22, 23 years. And compared to our industry, and we are doing very well. But maybe one of the reasons for 6 Degrees' success is that we are always striving for more and always striving for better.
Thanks for that intro, Paul. Because I know you semi well, and even just what you've said are the things I didn't know, and you're making me think now of things I want to explore. But what you mentioned about being okay in terms of business, I remember one common trend from you. We worked together through the academy in the height of the Australian lockdown. Was you were almost surprised how well your business was holding up. I remember every week we'd say, like, tell us about a positive this week, and you would be like, whatever's going on, the business is holding up. Like you kind of looked genuinely quite surprised. So can you tell us a bit more about that feeling?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. One is there is an artificial element to how well the business is doing. Our government has introduced a thing called JobKeeper. So they pay for about one third of our salaries. And so even though a business is down by about 30%, when you put to the bottom line JobKeeper, it actually makes our profit look really, really good. So that's one thing that is an artificial thing, and we come off that, likely to come off that in March. It may be earlier. The second part to our business is that we are very, very strong in FMCG. I don't think there's fast-moving consumer goods. And the one thing that is doing, one industry that's doing really well at the moment is FMCG. So that has been a really big blessing in disguise, because people still need to eat, people still need to drink and wash their hair.
Yeah. I said I've not washed my hair today. I just woke up like this.
As I said to you, Sean, it's looking good.
Okay, that makes sense. I do think the sector you're in, of course, makes a huge difference, right? One of the things we spoke about, Pete, was your lack of confidence in the sector you were in, wasn't it? At the beginning, you were like, "For fuck's sake."
Yeah, well, I'm in a sector rec to rec where it was almost a race to get rid of as many people as possible, not hire as many people as possible. But like anything, water finds its own level, right? Once we got through the initial shock and panic, and everybody understood what we were actually dealing with, and they worked out how to deal with it, people started hiring again. I made a placement into 6 Degrees.
And if you could find the right people, we'd hire more. In certain areas.
So there's still opportunity. What I would say is I could not believe how quickly recruitment business. I did a couple of market surveys, and how quickly the market in general turned around and said, "Do you know what? We're not feeling as much pain as we expected, and we are doing better than expected." And that wasn't just FMCG and supply chain and procurement. So many markets held up really well, particularly technology. But across the board, businesses, the recruitment industry said, "Do you know what? We're actually not doing that bad. It's not as bad as we thought it was going to be."
I think that we have to look at the fact that the government schemes that were put in place, were unprecedented. That, if it was just a financial downturn, there wouldn't have been the level of support there for organisations like left to right, which has been a saving grace. I think the true sign is going to be the future, when we've got to pay all this money back.
Which is probably our kids' problem, not ours.
Yeah, potentially. One thing that I'm thinking about in my head in the background, not unplanned, Paul, is what was your actual role like after being in the business for 20 plus years, and in the industry, for 20 plus years? I know you're not the CEO anymore. You're the founder and executive director. So pre-COVID, what was your role in the business? How did you spend your day?
And it's a really good point, Sean. And I think it's important to say, what we discussed today has been driven by our CEO, Suzie McInerney, who has done an incredible job through this time. And, of course, all of us got together once COVID hit to make decisions and share ideas. But Suzie has led this beautifully. And, I was CEO, February last year, and handed over to Suzie. She might say fast forward 18 months, poison chalice. But handed over to Suzie, and Susie's done an incredible job of shaping the business in her own way. And once, my plan was to move out of the business, not leave the business, but work on the business rather than in the business. And then, Suzie and I obviously had agreed to have a sort of handover period. New year came this year, and my role was to be working on, myself and my family, giving more time to them. And I have a number of other business interests that I wanted to give time to, as well as some philanthropic endeavours that are close to my heart. So that was my intention at the beginning of this year. And then
Can you remember going into 2020? I mean, I actually wrote some goals down going into 2020. Yeah, it's not 2021 yet. And a lot of them I have actually achieved. There's a few I haven't. Like I remember writing down I wanted to travel once a quarter. Like I felt like the last couple of years I'd lost, because the business was so new, you know, previous to Hoxo, traveling was a real big thing for me. Like even if it was just a weekend away. So I said I wanted to do that once a quarter this year. Obviously, that didn't happen.
Well, you had 4 weeks in Ibiza while
5.
5 weeks.
Yeah.
So you
so
made up for it.
I made up for it. Yeah, sure. But there was, you know, did you going into this year? Tell us a bit more about that. Like, what were your aspirations? And yeah, like, why was the motivation to step back and give someone else the opportunity to run the business?
I think a number of reasons. One, you know, I've been in 6 Degrees for 16 years. I turned 50 last year, and similar to yourself, I'm a very big goal setter, and I also believe in reinvention. And you know, you only grow if you reinvent. So. Yeah. You know, Suzie, we ran a process, and Suzie was the standout candidate, and you know, there was a transition. But my way of thinking was, you know, I am so passionate and I love recruitment, so I still wanted to be involved. And, you know, my focus was going to be more around growth and the growth areas of 6 Degrees and looking at M&A, looking at other areas that we can move into. So that was very much our focus. And, you know, now that COVID hit, you know, the growth area that I focused on was outplacement and career services, because that was something that I saw a huge opportunity as people were being displaced or stood down. And you know, we had reasonable success in that area and continue to do so. And you know, as we look at the business, we look at all aspects of what we are going to focus on moving forward. And you know, I'm hoping, you know, as you said, goals, my professional goals this year, I just sort of put those on hold, and I'll just transfer them to 2021 and pick it up and do it again.
Paul, sorry, Sean. Paul, can I ask, the situation was quite unique in the sense that Suzie had taken on the CEO role, the big role, the role that you'd sat in for many years, and then COVID hit. It's a bit like Barack Obama when he inherited the GFC. Was there part of you that thought, I wish I was still in the CEO role? You know, I need to be sailing this ship myself. Or was the part of you that was absolutely delighted that the weight rested on Suzie's shoulders?
That's a really good question, Pete. So I have utmost faith in Suzie. Suzie, and to her credit, like all great leaders, doesn't think she knows everything. So she, you know, more than ever sought people's counsel, our chairman's counsel, my counsel and my business partner's counsel, and external counsel, because no one had ever been through a global pandemic and no one had the answers. And you know, I spoke to Suzie before we did this tonight, and I said, you know, what are some of the things we, you know, and we'll talk about how we approached it, but what are some of the things that we could have done differently or improved, or would have, with hindsight, would have done better? And you know, it was one of those times where we were, you know, we were all said, we're all in this together, and we have each other's backs. It was an extremely stressful time, but once we made the tough decisions, and you know, one of the things that I've learned through 22 years in recruitment, when things are going bad, is and you know, Suzie's number one focus was people. And you know, once we had got everyone at home, and you know, we were one of the first organisations, not first recruitment companies, but first organisations to send people home. Luckily, you know, Suzie had just invested in huge IT infrastructure that enabled people to work remotely. We signed up to Zoom, and very quickly she deployed everyone, got everyone safe and everyone working at home. And then once we sorted out all people issues, the one thing that I have learned over the years is go hard and go early. And we made some pretty tough decisions, decisions that 6 Degrees had never made before, which was making people redundant. And we made about 10 people redundant. Luckily, we bought some of those back on JobKeeper. And you know, we cut all costs out of the business. You know, looked at our forecasts and our revenue and budgeting. Most importantly, looked at our cost line, and wherever we could get rid of a cost that was discretionary or a luxury, we did that. And you know, as you said, Pete, fast forward, what are we at? 8 months. we were in much better position than we'd forecast, because we did think the world was caving in. And we had to do it twice in Victoria. And the second lockdown was a lot harsher on us than the first. But it was through really good management and leadership early on that we were able to come out where we have been. I'll also say I don't think it's over.
No, for sure. Just going back on that, those decisions you made, how did you get involved in the communication strategy, Paul, or was it you were like main point of contact for Suzie to make sure she had?
No, it was definitely a team effort.
Right.
And as far as the communication strategy, Suzie worked very well with our head of people and culture, Alexandra Matthews. And they did a really good job of the communication. And I'm sure you'll ask me, what are the really important things or insights I can give recruitment leaders in the UK are going through this. And one of them is around the communication and making sure that you over communicate. I just don't think you can. And with everyone being at home, it makes it difficult. But at the same time, it does make it easy as well, because there's no excuse not to turn up to your 9 o'clock Monday town halls that we do, or the one-on-ones with people. So the communication, Suzie, is definitely one of her strengths, and she definitely owned that and did that really well.
Love it. Well, one final question on the whole decision to let people go, and it's kind of aimed at both of you, right? So I found this really interesting. I don't know, like a battle going on between rec to recs, especially the small rec to recs and recruitment owners in that first week of lockdown. And I'm talking about the UK more than Australia, but I'm sure you'll have an opinion. And there was this word knee-jerk reaction that a lot of rec to recs kept going on about. Like, I can't believe the knee-jerk reaction from some recruitment businesses in our country. Like, if this is how you treat your people, this will never be forgotten. There was loads of these comments coming out, and I was quite ashamed by it. And I kind of felt like, it's clever because you're going to get the candidate community to buy into what you're saying. You're attracting the talent that you probably need to make your money in the next few months, but you're fucking alienating your potential clients in the future. I mean, I was like, I didn't have a business as big as you, but even having 15 people, I made 2 people redundant, and that absolutely rocked my core. I hated it. I felt sick. The thought of having to do that with more people, that is not an easy task. No one does that on purpose. No one does that.
Absolutely horrendous, Sean. And we talk about looking after our people, and that's initially their physical well-being, but also their emotional well-being. And our culture is our DNA at 6 Degrees. It is the thing that sets us apart. And it's one when you make people redundant, which in 16 or 17 years we've never ever done before. That affects your DNA.
Of course.
I go back to GFC when we didn't make anyone redundant, and my 2 business partners at the time, we had a belief that we weren't going to make people redundant during that time. We were close to saying it publicly. And the counsel that I have was never ever say that, because sometimes it's better to make people redundant than the whole business fold and everyone's livelihoods fold. I don't believe there's any organisation or any leader that likes letting people go. And I and we lost a lot of sleep over it, and still sits uncomfortably with me. But we did it in the right way. We treated people and looked after them financially, but when we did let people go, it didn't end there. We had a program to keep in contact with the people we let go. We found employment for some of the people that we let go. I would say in the main, everyone would say we handled it really, really well.
What do you?
Yeah, I saw the opposite to knee-jerk reactions across the industry-wide. What blew me away was the lengths that, not all, the lengths that most recruitment businesses went to do everything that they could to keep their people. And they pulled levers left, right, and centre. And yes, of course, they cut costs, and things got tweaked all over the place. But the objective of that was to keep people in jobs. And by and large, where people could be kept in jobs, recruiters could be kept in jobs, they were kept in jobs.
It was literally that week before the furlough scheme in our country was announced. So we had there was the Friday to Friday where we went into lockdown, I think, or people were shutting like mad, panicking. And then the following Friday, it was announced just before we finished the week. And there was people that announced their redundancies on LinkedIn. Like, I'm really sorry, we've had to let go of 20 people today, but who then, rehired those people through the furlough scheme. And it was just it was a few days of madness. And I just remember thinking, I get what some people are doing, but you can't tarnish the industry with a brush. You can't. I just said, let's be empathetic, because we have no idea what's going on inside these companies right now. We don't know. Like, you can say they've let 10 people go. Ooh, harsh. They can't manage their finances. It's like, how the fuck do you know that? You haven't got a clue.
It's interesting you talk about the industry. Obviously I've known Pete a long time, and Pete's the rec to rec I have the utmost respect for in our industry. And you and I got to meet through this, Sean, and it was through the Hoxo Academy, and we have 15 other recruiters. I've never seen recruiters bind together more. And show vulnerability and support one another. I've had phone calls from people I don't know just to make sure that we're doing okay. I think it's really important. It's something I've done as well, is making sure you're reaching out to as many people as you can, your competitors, and making sure you've got one another's backs. And I think also through the use of social and stuff Pete's been doing as far as mental health and all those important things. I think I've never been prouder of our industry.
Same.
Absolutely. Yeah. Sorry, can I just share something with you? When COVID hit, looking at my own little business, I'd had a really busy kind of December and January, and I had lots of starters in Feb. I think I had 9 starters in Feb, right? And when COVID hit in March, I assumed that every single one of those recruiters who was sitting in probation, I assumed they'd all be sacked because they're in probation, and I'd have to hand back an amount of money that would basically bring me to my knees. Out of 9, oh, by the way, one of those was at 6 degrees. Out of 9, only one of them was let go. So that's the opposite of a knee-jerk reaction. That's recruitment businesses keeping people in a job who they don't have that much loyalty to. They've only just hired them. They're not tested. They're not proven. They haven't achieved anything yet, but they kept them in the job.
Yeah.
And if that was happening across the industry, then I share those sentiments, Paul. I've never been prouder of the recruitment industry.
Yeah, well, that's why we're doing this today and each week. It's trying to make sure that all over the world we're supporting each other. I think together we're stronger. I'm interrupting this podcast to give you another update from our sponsor, Odro. The team at Odro have launched another feature in summer 2020, and it's going to be a game changer. This is going to massively change the way the recruitment agency market operates globally for the future. They've called it Odro Producer. This platform sits alongside the company's award-winning video interview opportunity and gives you, the recruiter, the ability to create engaging, eye-catching video content ready to share in a matter of minutes. So you can record or upload a video, and then you can add banners, overlays, images, subtitles, logos, so that you can create these eye-catching videos that are built for LinkedIn. So whether you're interviewing, whether you're doing sales messaging, or you're just trying to put out valuable content online, then Odro is no longer just a video interview platform. It's also a content creation platform for recruiters. Get in touch with Odro today to see how you can implement this into your recruitment agency ASAP. Thanks for listening. Let's get back to the show. So let's get a little bit more into it then. So you've mentioned already today, Paul, that you saw this happen twice. So you had almost like the first installment of lockdown, and then you had a little period of coming out of it. And then it was literally the week we met was when you went back in. I remember the first call with you guys was like rock bottom. You'd literally just been announced you were going back into full lockdown. And how did that? So to set the context, where we are right now, we're at the end of mid to late November 2020. The UK, we're 2 weeks into our second lockdown. Cases are going up as far as I can see. There's zero confidence we're coming out of this lockdown on the 2nd of December, which was the initial deadline. There's talk of saving Christmas with a 5-day window of seeing your family and friends that, whatever happens, I think they'll open the doors for a few days. That's just going to have to happen. But
it wouldn't happen here, Sean.
Exactly. Yeah. So let's talk about that. Like, to me, the biggest thing I can see that I'd love for you guys to give us some insights in is what happens in January 2021. The weather's shy, it's dark, and there is no sign of us opening back up. Like, let's go back into the world you felt when we had that first chat in July time, July time.
It was June, July, yeah. And we were initially, it must have been July, because we were initially given 6 to 8 weeks of shutdown. And, I'm okay. I think my lowest point during that time was, I clearly remember it, Father's Day, because Father's Day was the day that we were all coming back. And I think Father's Day is early September, Pete, in Australia. And I remember looking at our Premier Daniel Andrews talking about Father's Day, saying it's going to be another 6 weeks. And I was thinking it was all ending today, and thinking we've got to be in this for another 6 weeks. And I'm not thinking about business. Our business was surprisingly okay. Although, I thought, how much more can we battle here with another 6 weeks? But personally, I was struggling 24/7 at home with my kids, homeschooling, and that I found really, really tough on a personal basis, because I am a social animal, and being stuck at home was really, really tough.
What is like? Can you paint a picture for us? What is home life like for you on a normality?
Normality for me is I travel a lot, so I would be away I'd be on 2 interstate trips per month, and I enjoy travel.
Paul, when you going to Coachella?
I was actually going. I was going to South by Southwest, actually, Pete.
Oh, okay, all right, fair enough.
Real FMCG conference I've heard about.
Exactly. I was 2 days before COVID hit. 2 days before I was due to fly out. I was heading to Austin, Texas, to go to South by Southwest for 10 days, and then I was heading to Cabo in Mexico and home via LA on my own for 5 weeks. I think that took me more time to get over than anything else.
How old are you?
I have a 4-year-old, a 10-year-old, and an 11-year-old.
Right, so they're at a real critical age, aren't they, in terms of
absolutely,
needing support, guidance, school, everything. They're really, real formative years. And normally you're away. I imagine then when you're home, you have great quality time together. You do fun things. Also, we're talking about your winter, and for people in the UK that might not realise, Melbourne in the winter is actually quite grim. Like
it's not a pleasant place.
No, I mean, I had the coldest winter of my life in Melbourne, and the reason was we had no heating at all in the flat, right? So at least in the UK we got a bloody radiator. So I had a flat.
There are things called electric heaters, Sean.
Well, we didn't know about them, right? So set the scene. We'll set the scene. We're on Queen's Road, I think it was, opposite Albert Park Lake, on the corner of Union Street, where Union Street tram stop is. Yeah. And my flat it's called Elizabeth Court, and it looked over the lake, and on pictures it was brilliant. We signed up to it without even going in. Walked in, it was all right, but there was no heaters at all. And then my bedroom was the warmest room because it was an internal room. So my window looked into my brother's room. So I only knew it was morning when he turned his bloody light on. So there was nights where I'd get up at like 3 a.m. and start getting ready for work, and all he'd done is gone to the toilet and come back and turn his light off. I was like, oh shit, it's not morning yet. But my business partner I used to live with, he used to sleep with a beanie hat on because it was that cold. So yeah, it was, winter in Australia, in Melbourne is not. So you're in that period. It's cold. You're going into second lockdown. How did the family react? How did your kids react?
You know what? The 4-year-old has kept us entertained. He has no idea what's going on. He can just say coronavirus, and he says it regularly, especially when we all put on masks. The 2 girls, Annabelle and Zara, I think they struggled once. A similar sort of thing when we said to them, actually, you're being homeschooled for another 6 to 8 weeks. I think they struggle, but 10 and 11-year-olds, your kids are a similar age, Pete. They're pretty resilient, aren't they?
Yeah. We had a bit of a shame in our household. My 2 boys, they both play futsal, indoor football, and they both, bless them, they'd worked really hard, and they've both just been selected to represent Australia at futsal.
Oh, right.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. They're doing really well, and they've both been invited on tours. So one of them, my eldest, had a tour to Barcelona.
Wow.
And the youngest, they were supposed to be leaving next week. and the youngest had a tour to New Zealand, and obviously those trips were cancelled. And so to tell your kids and try and explain to them that those trips are not going to happen because of this invisible disease, it's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And then you plunged into homeschooling. It's tough for them. It really is. It really is.
How did you manage homeschooling, Paul? I know you said you had support from your wife, but there was times where you were managing it. I remember there was a day where we had maybe you elaborate.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I managed it. I have to say my kids' school is very, very good.
Yeah.
So my eldest daughter is much more intelligent than I, and there was one time where I said to Annabelle, do you need any help with school? And she looked at me and said, "From you, Dad?" No, I would have to say, my wife did a fair bit, and I didn't do a lot. But that was because the school was so good. Had the school not been so good, I would have had to do a lot more.
A final interruption to today's episode to introduce Vincere. Vincere is the all-in-one CRM ATS platform built for the recruitment and staffing industry. Now, I first heard about these guys about a year ago. The amount of prospect recruitment agencies and clients I was working with that were telling me they were moving over to Vincere, I had to look into it. And what I found was a business that had a global reach with multiple offices around the world. So they've got this follow the sun methodology, which allows them to support recruitment businesses wherever you are and be in your time zone. But the technology that they've invested in is becoming a disruptor in the space. More and more recruitment businesses are doing this to give their recruiters a competitive advantage. They broke into the G2 Crowd's momentum grid as a market leader based on their reviews from their customers. So the agencies that are using this platform are raving about it. Now, if you're a RAG listener and you're thinking about changing CRM, or you're a new business looking to launch with a new CRM, then I would get in touch with these guys, because if you mention that you're a RAG listener, they're doing an amazing deal. By visiting www.vincere.io/RAG, you can get an exclusive deal which offers 2 months completely free on a 2-year commitment, or 3 months completely free on a 3-year commitment. This applies to all licenses that you've either signed up for now or that you'll add in the duration of the contract. So get on there and have a look. Finally, if you're listening and you're a recruiter and you're thinking, I want to move into a more of a business development role, and I'd like to keep hold of my recruitment knowledge. Well, these guys are recruiting for a BD person, multiple roles in both Sydney and London right now. So if you've got a strong recruitment background, you want to move into BD and you want to work for a fast moving tech business that's helping people like you right now, then get in touch via their website, because they're hiring today. Back to the show. What was your kind of worst fears or thoughts that were going through your mind without the knowledge of when you were going to come out? What sort of, what was going on in your head?
My worst fear, I always knew I'd be okay, but I had a lot of fears for a lot of people, and they're, specifically, when this hit, first time and second time, we did a people audit of people that we thought may really struggle through this time, and what we identified is people, for instance, living alone, because if you're living alone through COVID, and that was whether people that work for 6 Degrees or friends of mine, there was a big focus on making sure that you're reaching out to those people. You were allowed to exercise for 1 hour a day, so you go and walk with these people. There were people, again, in my personal network and at work, who was financially hurting because of this. Because one of the things I didn't mention is that 6 Degrees went to 4 days a week, or 0.8 salary-wise. So that was another cost-saving measure that we did. And so who was that we had to look out for financially, and just people, mentoring. There weren't many people that weren't adversely affected by this, especially in Victoria. So, from a humanitarian point of view, my big concern was for other people, and people within my 4 walls of my home, and making sure that everyone was okay. And Pete and I walk till we don't live far from one another. And I made a conscious effort to walk with as many people, because that is how we got connection through COVID. It's how, the social aspect is really important. That's the only way we could socialize, because I'm not really good at doing Zoom parties or anything like that. That just doesn't work for me. And so, it's the focus for me, or my big concern was for other people, and just making sure we all got through this.
So how did you do that, Paul? How did 6 Degrees keep the morale up of your people? It's one thing reaching out and saying, "Are you okay?" But how did you try and bring some joy and some levity into their lives, if at all?
Absolutely, it's a really good question, Pete. And the first thing is that we gave utmost flexibility, and everyone's situation was different. And from a homeschooling perspective, if you had 2, 3, 4 kids at home and you had to homeschool them, there was utmost flexibility and understanding. That the mental health of our people was really, really important. So I remember one thing, Sean, that I shared with you is we had many mental health days where we just said to people, take the day off. Looking at screens all day and being boxed in your house is not easy. So we implemented mental health days. Some of the other stuff, Suzie, we have an employee assistance program at 6 Degrees where you can actually utilize psychological services for free. We then opened that up to not just every employee at 6 Degrees, but all their family members. So, if your mental health is not great, that's one thing. But if you're living with people that have mental health issues, that's also really hard. So we opened up our employee assistance program to all employees. And then we did things like meditation classes. Kristen D'Souza, who runs our Queensland business, her husband is a personal trainer. So every Wednesday morning we did virtual personal training, which created, again, my kids got involved in that and created really good energy and connection there. We had awards nights, we had one-on-one coffees, we had coffee roulettes, we had Katie, who's did guided meditation every week. There's a thing here called the Resilience Project, and that's a weekly session about resilience and things that you can do to build your resilience. So we tried lots of things. Not all of them landed, but most importantly, what we tried was to build and maintain connection, because that was the part that was missing the most.
Well, without doubt. What about you, Pete? You work alone, right? So obviously, I really enjoyed working closely with you throughout the period, and I think I could only see your interaction with us at Hoxo. What was it like for you being without the team? In some ways, you didn't have to worry about other people.
Yeah. In some ways, I'd had 16, 17 years of training for COVID.
Isolation beforehand.
So isolation and working on my own wasn't a problem, really. But that doesn't mean it didn't affect you. There was still the inability. I used to try and get into the CBD and meet people and have, as you know, Melbourne is all about coffees and getting out and meeting as many people as you possibly can on a regular basis. Couldn't do that. So I don't have colleagues. There was no colleagues ringing me up to see if I was okay, and I didn't necessarily have obvious people for me to ring to see if they were okay. So it probably did, and it was quite lonely for a while. But then this weird magical thing started happening. People started ringing me anyway, and I started ringing people anyway. And as you say, Paul, people I hadn't spoken to for ages would just be putting in calls just to check in and see how they were. And for somebody to remember a one-man band who, doesn't have any kind of professional necessarily connection with, to pick them up, pick the phone up and see how they're doing, it's wonderful. It's lovely.
Love that. Paul, being an executive search firm, I mean, again, I've never worked for an exec search firm, but in my mind, I see a more mature business. I see a more mature landscape of employees. What is the demographic like that work for 6 Degrees in terms of age and background, and how do you think that affects the kind of the way you communicate, but also the way they can handle the situation?
Yeah, it's a good question. Well, as far as executive search firm, I see the executive search market as Egon Zehnder, Korn Ferry, Russell Reynolds, Hydrix. and we sit below that. So I would say we're executive recruitment in the sense that the majority of our work is retained, and we don't get into highly contingent roles. So we are the demographic of our business. We've got more females than males, probably 60-40. Average age would be around 33, 34, I'm guessing. So still young. And being 33, 34, I would say half have children, half don't. So I was talking to someone this morning about my Michael Page days and how I just can't believe that what went on in those days, and I'm glad it doesn't anymore, to be quite honest. But it is a more mature environment, but we still have a lot of fun.
Yes, if you're thinking about that age, I mean, I'm 34 now, so looking around the group of friends I've got and all the people at my age, you'd say the one common denominator you'd expect is they've probably got a decent setup at home. That'd probably be the thing you'd expect in your early 30s. Whereas I've got a couple of staff members that are in their early 20s, and the challenge was, they were sharing kitchen tables, and one of them was pitching up on an ironing board because they couldn't face being in the living room with the other person. So they just put the ironing board in the bedroom, and that really hit me. I was like, that's like thinking about the early 20s lifestyle, mid 20s lifestyle of working in a city and getting out. And that's what it's all about, isn't it? Like you're so motivated by the buzz of the city. Like when I was in Melbourne, I was 20. I was working with Sarah Adamson at the time. Sarah Hay works for you. She was a high flyer. And we had this. Yeah, I know, I can tell. She was one that I was like, wow, you're gonna be pretty special. She'd only just started just before me. And I think I was pretty impressive in my team, and then I left. But we had such a cool group of young people that just loved the Rialto and being out and about, and like the thought of going into lockdown then at that age would be totally different. And there's so many people listening to this who've probably got quite junior level teams, quite young teams. So I feel for them. And if this lockdown goes into next year, what do they even do in that with those people? How do they help those people?
Yeah, it's a really good question in the sense of, one of the things that and as I said, we were lucky because we are big in FMCG, but there are lots of cliches and words, and we've avoided the P word so far, and I hope it's not used. But one of the cliches that was used big at 6 Degrees was, we've got to fish where the fish are biting. And so we were very, very focused on what are the industries that are really hot right now, and what are the roles within those industries. So, 3PLs and transport companies and anyone delivering packages to homes are going to be employing. So we had a big focus on those. FMCG, as we said, what roles within FMCG are really big? So the supply chain engineering and manufacturing roles. And, so situations of having discussions with organisations of what happens if you're, and in meat manufacturing, for instance, in Victoria, there was a lot of outbreaks in meat manufacturing organisations, and talking to clients about what happens if your team falls over and gets infected. Are you ready to redeploy new teams? And having discussions with organisations of playing what if scenarios and making sure that there are opportunities for us. And that did us really, really well.
I like that. You mentioned the P word, but we've got to bring it up because you mentioned you mentioned your own pivot in the early days. You mentioned about the switch to outplacement. Tell us a bit more.
I didn't say the P word.
No, but we know what it was. So tell us how did that all come about?
So it was a situation. As I said, I was not removing myself from the business, but definitely taking a backward step. And it was a situation where guys, we did. It was an oh God moment of, well, where is all this going? And I think I'm pretty safe in saying that a lot of people were a lot more worried in March than fast forward. I think all of us would agree that we are in a much better position than we thought we were going to be in March. Yeah. And so we thought the world was caving in. I put my hand up and said, okay, guys, let's look at career services and outplacement. We'd done bits and pieces of it over the years for specific projects. We just, again, deployed people within our business, because that was one of the really important parts early on, was looking at the OD, or organizational design, of our business, and seeing where are the opportunities here. So we moved people in certain areas that we knew were not going to be big in 6 months, and put them into our new technology business that we'd set up. Those people are really thriving. So it's, what I would say to the people out there and the business owners and leaders is making sure very early you identify where the opportunities are and where they aren't, and put the right people in place.
Yeah, makes sense.
Paul, earlier on in this conversation, now you all speak the truth, which can sometimes be difficult to hear, but earlier on in this conversation, you intimated that you didn't believe we were through the worst of it, or that you thought there was more to come. What do you mean by that? Or it's not over? What do you mean by that? And then secondly, if heaven forbid we do go into a third lockdown, what would be the first thing that you would do in your business, or what would you do differently to the second lockdown? Yeah, it's like 18 questions.
Yeah, I think Pete I think Sean said, I don't think it's over, is what I said. I do think we're through the worst of it in Australia, because we are lucky. We can close our borders, and there's a state in Australia, South Australia, that's got 20 cases, and overnight, basically, the borders have been shut, and we can contain it very quickly. Unlike the UK, where open border or open-ish borders that you're not closing down, and hence it's very hard to contain. I think we're through the worst of it. God, I don't want to see another year like 2020, as far as for 6 months you're basically pretty much closed down and closed for business. I think we've got a vaccine coming. All the indicators, even just reading the Australian Financial Review this morning, is that jobs are being created. Our unemployment is at 7%, which through a global pandemic, I think is a reasonable number. And just looking at our job flows, they're definitely on the rise. So I'm reasonably optimistic about 2021, but I think it's still going to be a tough year. I mean, we're not looking at putting on 15, 20 people, I'm sorry to say, Pete, but I think it's going to be a bumpy road the next 12 months. I worry for places like the UK, Europe, and America, who have just not been able to contain this. But hopefully the vaccine in the second half of next year will make it easier globally.
It's got to, yeah. I think the news of the vaccine was a real lift a week or so ago, and there was that second vaccine announced 2 days ago. That's in the US 95%. There's one in Russia 92% effective. So I think the fact that the UK have spent so much money on securing their numbers of vaccines, like we're going hard in the way that's going to be the way we deal with it. I think. It's crazy. I mentioned it on last week's podcast. I was in Manchester last week, and there was a protest of people saying there is no virus. There's thousands of people in the city. One guy had a massive go at me, told me to take my mask off because I'm a mug. I was like, regardless of whether you believe
tell that to the 50,000 people in the UK that have died.
Exactly. I know one of my uncles died in the first wave, and I'm like, I'm each to their own opinion, but. You know what I mean? Like, leave me alone. Anyway, but there's lots of that going on. There's lots of like, backlash and different people's opinions, anti-vaxxers. There's all sorts going on. I've got a very similar attitude to you, I think, Paul. And I loved Stephen Carter's comment last week. Let's stop being armchair epidemiologists and just whatever we've thought of, someone smart is already working on it. I thought that was a great way to look at it. One thing I am interested to know is, how is your business different? And how will you? What are you going to hold on to in the future? Let's say we go back to a completely normal world. You can travel freely. You can do everything you would have done before. What will you, at 6 Degrees, hold on to from this new way of working? What parts do you like? What have you enjoyed? And what do you think what's important to keep hold of?
Yeah. So we have focused very much on what we call contracting savvy markets, the IT and accounting and finance. So our focus moving forward is going to be investing and focusing on those very, very heavily. We weren't in those markets 12 months ago, and whether that's through acquisition or huge investment, that is going to be a big focus of ours. No question, not just 6 degrees. I think the world is a much more flexible work environment. And there's different schools of thought on this, Sean. I am a strong believer in a flexible work environment, but it's not anywhere, anytime. You build a culture when you're together. Very hard to build a culture on screens. Inducting people, it's much better inducting people face to face. And I think that sharing and collaboration of information, performance management, learning and development is best done face to face. So we will have a much better balance and a much greater flexibility. And that's not anywhere, anytime, but historically we were pretty much office bound.
What do you think that would look like then? Like, I mean, I don't know if you've set that in stone, but
no, we haven't defined anything, and it's really up to the individual. I think if you're a flexible environment, you're being a little bit hypocritical if you start dictating flexibility. We haven't made decisions on this, and we're yet to see. But I think 6 degrees will be a lot more flexible, and I think the world will be a lot more flexible.
Yeah, agreed. What about you, Pete? Anything you'd want to change about the way you run your business, run your life in the future?
Blimey, where do we start, Sean? Where do we start? Where do we start? I was just going to add to Paul's point, just take the spotlight off me entirely. I
like watching Pete's face and seeing if he's listening. I get the questions. I'm like, I don't think he's listening. So he's like, whoa, where's that come from?
You want to go through my goals list right now? We'll be here for hours. What I'm hearing a lot more is that a lot of businesses have realized that they can now trust their people a lot more because the recruiters have demonstrated it. They've demonstrated that they can be in a totally different room, in a totally different building, and they can still work hard and put in. I've heard business leaders who were really rigid, maybe stuck in the dark ages, who've basically said, look, we're really happy with our people working flexibly in the future because we know that they can do it. We know that we can trust them. And that's for me, that's a huge silver lining of COVID.
Do you think people will go as heavily down the headcount route to grow their organizations? Do you think it'll be as the traditional recruitment model of X heads, X productivity per head, X growth? Do you think that'll still be the way people see growth?
I don't, Sean. It was one other thing I was going to add is just in both 6 degrees, we got fat and lazy when it came to expenses and as costs. And so we really cut costs big time when COVID hit. And you look back and how fat and lazy we got from a cost perspective. And I've journaled a lot through this time, and from a business perspective, reminded myself of so many costs that we were nice to haves or luxuries that when you were doing really well. But our focus now should be on cost control and maximizing revenue per head. Our focus has always been revenue per head, but not profitability per head. So our focus is going to be much more around revenue per head and profitability per head, and a much tighter control on costs. Now, fast forward 8 years and the next 8 years become boom times, I'm sure we'll get fat and lazy again. But it's something I think really important to keep reminding yourselves of. When you're spending money, do you really need that? And my chairman gave me a book called Will It Make the Boat Go Faster? Which is about a rowing team in Australia. And every decision you make is, are you actually going to be are you going to be growing your people and culture and productivity and all those type of things when you're spending money? And if you're not, don't do it.
Yeah, a guy called Darren Minshall, who did a bit of consulting with us a couple of years ago, he mentioned that book, and it was a really clear, like, every decision you make, you ask that one question, don't you? Like, will it make the boat go faster? If it's a no, don't do it. Like, it's literally relentless such attitude to growth. That actually, you've just shortcutted my next question was going to be, I really enjoyed the interaction with you, Paul. I feel like you've got a lot really interesting things to talk about, and that usually comes from the things you expose yourself to. So what is your library like of information? Where do you get inspiration? What are you reading? What are you listening to? What's your where do you get it from?
Yeah, it's a interesting question because it has changed over time, and I've got a really curious mind, so I ask a lot of questions, and are well known for asking questions that people are too scared to ask, either because they might really appear stupid and they'll look stupid. I'm not scared about that. And also some people are scared to ask those questions because they might be a little bit direct or controversial. So, I have always had a curious mind, and that has served me really well. I have I order a lot of books. I don't read them all. I was just, Suzie and I sat on a Simon Sinek webinar this week where he was talking to people in Australia. We were meant to go and see him live. We couldn't do that, so it was 2-3 hour webinars. And I love Simon Sinek. I love Brene Brown. I love Tim Ferriss, who are the more modern management and leadership people. And I don't listen to podcasts. I try and listen to podcasts. My attention span is not that great. So the first thing I do when I see a podcast is it 30 or 40 minutes? Because that's about all I can do. However,
we've done 53 now. Just
my radio program that I've listened to for the last 10 or 11 years in Australia is no longer next year. So what I have said to myself and diarised is that I will be writing. I'll be looking at podcasts as my morning ritual rather than listening to my normal radio program. But in this day and age, there is no excuse for not doing personal development, whether that is through books, whether that is through podcasts, whether that is through YouTube. Prime TV has incredible amounts of leadership, TED Talks. There is no shortage of information, and I use them all.
Yeah. Okay. What about you, Pete?
And try and make 30 minutes to an hour a day, whatever it may be, whatever platform to learn.
Consume. Love it.
And can I just say that Paul, once Paul has that information in his head, he's very happy to share it. I'll tell you a quick story. So quite a few years ago, because I'm a one-man band, as we've already identified, I decided I needed a mentor. And I wrote down 3 or 4 names of people I would like to approach. The top of that list was Paul Hallam. I didn't for one second think he would say yes. But I thought I'll pitch it anyway. So I rang him, and no, actually, I think I was too cowardly to call you. I think I emailed you, and I said, Paul, have you ever thought about mentoring? To which he replied, not only have I thought about it, Pete, but I'm very passionate about it. I've done it for quite a few years, and I already mentor quite a few people. Why do you ask? I said, right, okay. So, well, I would love a mentor, and do you think you'd be open to it? We had a good chat about it, after which Paul sent me a 16-page document in which he wanted me to detail where I was now, what I wanted to get out of it, what my goals were, the objectives, and all the rest of it. It was phenomenal, and it really made me sit up and take it seriously. And it's been great, and you're very generous with your time, Paul, and all that information that is in your head. And I thank you for that.
Thank you, Pete.
I was out. I was out yesterday. I was talking on the phone to a mate of mine, and we were talking about this topic, right? So I was a school teacher back in 10 years ago. I finished teaching. I went to Australia. So, and I look back, and there was something in me that loved the element of sharing knowledge to people that were younger on the journey, right? And even now, there's a few people I've mentored. Hisham Mazuz being one of them. Before he even worked for me, I was a mentor for a year, and then he ended up working for me. And look, he's done pretty well. And And I've got a business coach, a life coach, and I've just started working with a psychologist last night, right? And I absolutely fundamentally believe that looking up to people that have been through journeys that I want to and have achieved things I want to achieve is the best way of shortcutting problems. But I feel like this should be something that's more ingrained in society. Like, everyone should have a mentor that's 10 years older, and everyone should have someone who's 10 years younger that they mentor. I think it should just be a...
Sorry, I would say it's okay to have a mentor that's a lot younger than you as well. It's taken me a while, but the whole diversity piece is really important, and there are a lot of 30-year-olds who can teach me a lot. And one thing I'll say to what you said, Peter, as far as the mentoring, when people ask you, it's one of the greatest compliments someone can give you is that they want to be mentored by you. And I think the one other thing I said to you, Peter, is at the time, the only conditions I have is you do what you say you're going to do, and if we agree to things. One of the things was, have your plan to me a couple of days before, and if we agree to do things post our catch up, then you follow through, because otherwise it's not respecting your mentor, and vice versa, as far as the mentee as well, is just doing what you say you're going to do.
And it was the first time I'd ever written goals, ever.
Yeah, my goals of what served, and I've got my goals from 25 years ago. Of what served me very, very well through life is my goals that I set for myself every year and reassess every 3 months.
Well, I remember you telling me that there was only 1 year in 25 years that you hadn't done your goals, and when you look back and reflect, it was one of the worst years for you personally, professionally, in terms of moving forward and development.
Correct.
Yeah. One thing I've learned, and I don't want to press too far on me personally, but the goals of business were pretty much all I had a couple of years ago. Like, they were, if I looked at my goals, it was all work, work, work. And actually I I had no goals outside of work. So what I've done this year is try and build almost like a wheel of life, where you've got your business, you've got your relationships, you've got your health, you've got your wealth, you've got all these different areas. And then it's what goals do you want to achieve in each one of those? And within reason, you might not achieve everything, but it's really taught me that, especially going into a pandemic, you need more than just a business. You need all areas of your life to be okay, for you to be okay. Paul, I wish we could carry on talking for another hour or so. I think there's so much we could touch on, but I just want to say thanks. I want to say thanks for giving me your time throughout the last few months. Thanks for giving us your time again today, and for sharing intimately what goes on in your mind, in your business, in your family. I would imagine people listening to this might want to reach out and say hello. You're open to that?
Absolutely, yeah. So obviously linked through LinkedIn through this, and have really enjoyed our conversation, Pete and Sean, today. And if there's one thing I'll leave with any business owner or leader within this business, as far as going through lockdown, that we talk. There's a phrase that's often talked about as far as putting on your mask first, which is talking about being on an airline or an aeroplane. When those lights come on and the masks come down, and you're always encouraged to put on your mask before you help anyone else. And I think that's a really, really important thing, that people need to look after themselves before they can look after anyone else. And that's making sure that you're exercising and eating well and doing the right things for your mental health in these times. And looking after yourself before you can look after anyone else. And there's lots of other things I can talk about as far as leaders we can do, but that's the most important. Before you can help anyone, you've got to help yourself. But the others are really important, as far as putting people first and constant communication. And those three things, I think will set you up really well. Because remember, the lockdown, as we look at it, Pete, was a moment in time. When we were going through it, it was a long, tough time, but now we're out of it, and it's the only way is up, really. So it does pass. These tough times do pass, and we know from experience that when they do, we hopefully cash in and do really well from it.
Yeah, and you know what? Look, we're very pleased over here to see what's going on for you guys. You know, we've got our own journey, but we get inspiration from the way that you guys have come out of it after such a tough time. So thank you so much, Pete. Always a pleasure. Paul, appreciate it. Guys, thank you for listening today. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did enjoy it, I don't ask you to pay me to listen to this show, but I ask you to do one thing every week. It's just share it with someone who you think would need it. So Paul's story will benefit other people as well as yourself. If you can just send this via email, text, WhatsApp, whatever, to at least one person you think would benefit from listening to Paul, that would be great. Because I've said it every week. Together, I honestly believe we are stronger to get through this. I'll be back again on Tuesday with a very, very exciting guest. We have Chris Eldridge, who's the CEO of Interquest Group, another large entity, UK-based. And then next Thursday, Pete, we've got Angela Hawkins.
Yeah, I knew you were going to ask me that, and I'm 99.9% certain it's Angela Hawkins from
Angela Hawkins. I was at lunch with her on Friday, and she's psyched to be involved.
I can't wait for that one. Next Thursday, 8 a.m. UK time, 7 p.m. Australian Eastern time. So thank you so much for listening. I'll be back again on Tuesday, but in the meantime, you stay safe, and we'll see you soon.